I made some bonehead mistakes on this clamp rack which cost me time and money because I didn't have a plan. The clamp rack I have now has served its purpose for several years, but it's not working for me very well anymore because although it's great at holding F-style clamps and trigger clamps, it's not great at holding parallel clamps, bar clamps, and pipe clamps. Usually before I build anything in my woodshop, I first build it in a 3D modeling software called SketchUp so I can see the dimensions, how it's going to look, and how it's going to go together. But because I thought this would be such an easy build, I decided not to make plans first because I thought there's no need, and boy was I wrong. As you would have guessed, this did not go as planned. These triangle pieces will be the clamp rack holders, the pieces actually holding the clamps. And I'm building this rack in a way where it will hold parallel clamps and pipe clamps specifically, really securely, though it will do a great job at holding trigger clamps and F-style clamps as well. You're about to see the first mistake that I made by not creating this build in SketchUp first. And by the end of this project, I will have made enough mistakes where I had to buy an additional 4 foot by 8 foot, 3/4 inch piece of plywood for this project, and that's an extra $85 where I live. So I got all the pieces cut and I decided to put it all together, and I'm really glad I did because I don't love how it looks. The clamp holders protrude out farther than the ends and it just looks a little off. So I'm going to change the design of the ends and it should make it look a lot better. Mistakes happen, no big deal. I'll just cut another 2 pieces that will be the ends of the clamp rack, and there should be no more mistakes in this project, right? Okay, I remade the clamp rack ends and they're better, but as you can see, the clamp holders still stick out farther than the bottom of the ends because I mismeasured. I did not take into account the 3/4 inch plywood that's the back of the clamp rack. And I am out of plywood, so I'll need to wait till tomorrow to get some more so I can remake these clamp rack ends for the 3rd time. Now, usually I create all my plans in SketchUp, which is a 3D modeling program, so these things don't really happen, and if they do happen, they're very minor. But I didn't do that for this project because I thought it was just going to be a quick build and I wouldn't need to make a 3D rendering of it. But I should have definitely modeled it in SketchUp first, and I've wasted kind of a lot of plywood making these mistakes. But they're good learning experiences, and this clamp rack should be done tomorrow. This first clamp rack end that I'm cutting, I'm using a circular saw and a straight edge because I want to show you how you can cut these pieces with a circular saw and you don't need to buy a track saw. With that being said, the track saw is quicker to set up, can be more accurate, and leaves a much cleaner cut. I also used a circular saw for that first cut because I'm making plans for this build and I want these plans to be accessible to as many people as possible, and I'm aware that a lot of people don't have track saws, and that's totally fine. You can get the job done with a circular saw and a straight edge. One thing that saved me a lot of time is making 2 extra clamp holders. I was being a dumbo and I split 2 of the clamp holder pieces because I used a screw that was longer than the drill bit I used to drill the pilot hole. But it was no big deal because I had made 2 extra clamp rack holder pieces. And you may be wondering, why didn't you save that lumber and use it to make 2 extra clamp rack ends? Well, that plywood was too narrow, so it would not have worked for the clamp rack ends. In a little bit, you'll see me take down the clamp rack that I have up now, and it was a little more laborious than it could have been because I definitely sacrificed function for looks. I'm a big believer that you don't need a lot of expensive, fancy power tools to build things, and if you've noticed, I have only used 4 power tools in this entire build. I've made detailed written and video plans for this build, which I'm calling the Ultimate Clamp Rack, and I apologize for not coming up with a better name, but I have worked out all the hiccups as you've seen so that you don't have to. This next and last mistake you're about to see is
really bad. And after you see it, you're going to lose some respect for me, and that's okay because I have as well. Woodworkers as a species tend to overbuild things, and that was the case here. I thought it would look nice to put a thin strip of plywood to act as a cap on the bottom of the clamp rack. Reasonable enough, right? Not so much. If I would have kept this piece here, it would have limited the amount of space I would have to put clamps on this clamp rack. It would hold 5 less parallel clamps and 10 less F-style clamps. Yeah, bonehead move. Luckily, I panic removed it when I realized the mistake, but unfortunately, I didn't have the camera on to record my distress. When I built this clamp rack, I hid the front screws with walnut dowels, which is why I had to cut off the front with this jigsaw, but I regret nothing. The walnut dowels looked so sweet. If you take one thing from this video, it should be that planning is important. Financial planning, family planning, but most importantly, well above those trivial things I just mentioned, plan before you build a woodworking storage solution. As you can see, I'm alone, all alone. So I needed to secure this to the studs in the wall by myself, which is why I preset these screws to make securing this a lot easier. This clamp rack can hold 20 to 40 clamps depending on the type, and the top can act as a nice little shelf to put stuff if I want. It's good to have options. Always remember to be kind and be awesome, and I'll see you in this next video.